I am someone who highly values personal space and would like to know if this is a realistic standard to have in a relationship that will eventually lead to living together. I believe it is better to have separate bedrooms and do sleepovers instead of one partner sleeping on the couch whenever the relationship is going through a difficult time. From a financial perspective, I understand that may not be possible, so please disregard that aspect. Story 1. I snore, and my wife cannot sleep when I do. We sleep separately most of the time and have been happily married for 21 years. Story 2. Whatever works for your relationship is all that matters. Most people enjoy co-sleeping in a relationship and do not prefer to sleep apart. So it should be discussed and communicated, especially if it is a deal breaker for you. Also, the idea of someone having to sleep on the couch when the relationship is going through something is unhelpful. I would never allow a partner to tell me to sleep on the couch, nor would I want to sleep on a less comfortable surface because I was angry at my partner. Anyone who actually sleeps on the couch due to arguments is probably not in a healthy relationship. Story 3. We have done it for the past 15 years. I am a restless sleeper who snores. She sleeps in the middle, kicks, and steals covers. The best thing we ever did was to get separate rooms. Story 4. It works and can actually save or improve a relationship. Plus, having personal space is important. If partners want to spend time together, they can have sleepovers. I support it if it works in the relationship. Story 5. As someone who is a very light sleeper and does not get much sleep, this arrangement works for me and my girlfriend. We have different sleeping schedules, so it suits us. Growing up, I did not share a room much, so I was used to having my own room and space. I sleep much better because of it. You just have to remember to make time for your significant other, which I truly appreciate. We do not have unnecessary fights about sleeping arrangements or waking each other up with snoring. We value sleep highly, so this works well for us. We cuddle when we watch television, and that is enough for us. Story 6. My boyfriend and I have separate bedrooms. He has insomnia and is awake multiple times during the night. He has a hard time falling asleep and needs total silence. I snore a bit. He comes to bed with me at the same time and we cuddle. He cuddles me until I fall asleep. Then he quietly goes to the spare bedroom to sleep. It works well for us. Ideally, we would sleep together all night, but his comfort is important to me, and I don't mind sleeping alone. Story 7. I think in a perfect world, it is the ideal setup. Sleep is paramount to happiness in life. I need it to be very cold. The women I have dated tend to want it warmer. In a perfect setup, the master bedroom would be her domain, and I would take the guest bedroom, which would have a window air conditioning unit. At night, we would cuddle, watch television, wait to get sleepy, and then I would go to my frozen ice planet of Hoth while she stayed in her warm terrarium like a lizard under a heat lamp. I do not think sleeping in the same room is good for most couples because most couples are not compatible sleepers. One ends up sacrificing for the other, leading to resentment and sleepless nights. To me, people who think co-sleeping is necessary are people who are not secure in the relationship to begin with. They fear this small bit of distance. If you are compatible and happy, where you sleep should not matter at all, as long as you both sleep well. Story 8. I understand the idea, but most importantly, it is what you and your partner think of it. Mine is completely against it, so we sleep together. Story 9. My grandparents were successfully married and lived in separate rooms for more than 50 years. It is not about distance. It is about comfort. Story 10. I pitched this to my now wife when we were barely dating, and now it's an ongoing joke. We have slept separately mostly since the baby was born. We would shift so someone was always awake with him, and it was easier to sleep on your turn if he wasn't around. I can sleep anywhere at any time, so it doesn't bother me much, but she has gotten so used to my presence that if I'm not home or she's in the bedroom alone, she doesn't sleep well. I know a few older couples who sleep separately, my grandparents included. One of them would often sleep in the recliner in the living room. I don't know anyone under 50 who does this. I don't personally find it weird, just uncommon. My wife and I sleep in a king bed, usually near the edges on our respective sides. So unless I intentionally scoot to the middle and reach out for her, she's not close enough to touch. But just being in the same room is comforting for her. Story 11. My wife and I do this and it works fine. We started doing it when she was pregnant with our second child so she could get as much uninterrupted sleep as possible, and we just kept it going afterward. Story 12. My wife and I started this 5 years ago. She is a heavy sleeper who snores and tosses and turns. I am a light sleeper. She even had a sleep study done, and the doctor said she was completely healthy. Over the years, I was getting less and less sleep, about 3 to 5 hours a night. I tried earplugs, but that did not work. On a whim, we tried sleeping in separate rooms. For the first time in years, I slept through the night. For the first time in years, I felt rested the next day. She was more excited about it than I was, honestly. Story 13. Not a bad idea at all if you can afford it. A lot of people where I live can't, so it's usually the bedroom and the couch. I don't mean he's sleeping on the couch, but more like, if you want some space, you take the couch. My dad sleeps on the couch a lot in their house because he snores, and it drives my mom insane some nights. They can still sleep together most of the time, but they've been happily married for over 40 years at this point, and they swear by it. Ultimately, it will only matter if you think it matters. If your partner insists that you need to share one bed, then having separate beds is going to be a problem. If your partner doesn't care, then it won't be a big deal. Just prioritize it when you're considering compatibility. Story 14. I know a couple who do this and it works well for them. They are both avoidant. This would never work for me. I actually did it once when I was in a relationship with an avoidant, and from that experience learned it is not for me. Story 15. It saved our relationship. I snore and I like to fall asleep with the television on. She is a light sleeper and we have opposite schedules. If it were not for us having our own sleeping quarters, we probably would not have lasted this long, going on 7 years. Time apart is just as important as time together. Story 16. I struggle to sleep, so I am very much in favor. She is not on board, though, but we have a spare bedroom for special occasions. Story 17. Not me, but my grandparents spent their entire married life in separate bedrooms and were very happily married for over 60 years. From what I understand, my grandfather snored terribly. So you do what works for you and your partner, and do not worry about what other people think about any of it. It is not their business. Story 18. We both snore and have different sleep needs in terms of noise, light levels, and whether the window is open or closed. Therefore, we each have our own rooms and it works very well for us. 13 years married and counting. Story 19. You will sleep better, and quality time is more intentional with yourself and your partner. It is only wins to me. Story 20. Depends on the couple. Maintaining the relationship can be essential, especially if one partner has a different sleep schedule or snores heavily. Sleep is very important. Story 21. My wife and I have been together for almost 30 years. I am a night owl and she is a morning person. We have found that having our own bedrooms makes life much more enjoyable for both of us. We go to bed together every night. 10 minutes later, she is asleep. I lie in bed and watch television for about 15 minutes after she rolls away. Then I get up and go downstairs for another hour or two. When I go back to bed, I go into my room. This way, I do not disturb her slumber, and she does not wake me up when she gets out of bed in the morning. Story 22. My folks always have. Father snores and is a night owl. Mother is a light sleeper and goes to bed at a more normal hour. They watch TV in her room or engage in other activities until she goes to bed, and then he goes off to do his own thing for another hour or two. Before they retired, they were both on call as well, so there was no reason to disrupt two people's sleep every time one got called. It seems to be working. They have been married 35 years and are some of the happiest and healthiest older people I know, clearly still in love. With that said, instead of having one partner sleep on the couch whenever the relationship is going through something, I don't think that is a good reason. Wanting your own space is fine, but if you are having relationship problems frequently enough to consider it for that reason, I think you have deeper issues. Anyway, I am personally a human inferno, and unless it is completely freezing in the room, it is unlikely anyone is getting sleep while in physical contact with me. So actually sleeping with the other person is already out of the question. Story 23. Every relationship is unique and reflects the people within it. Maintaining honest and open communication about your wants and needs helps you stay happy and healthy. That is all that matters. Story 24. I am approaching this from a sleep quality perspective, so it might not apply to your situation personally. We tried different rooms because of a snoring and light sleeper issue we had been troubleshooting for several years. Both of us benefited significantly. We slept better and had more energy during the day. Over time, we each bought mattresses and blankets that suited us, and I honestly believe we are both healthier because of it. I have not mentioned this to many people. It is not a secret, but I am aware there is some stigma around it. I have shared a bed with another person consistently since I was about 19, and this is the best I have slept since I was a teenager. We often share a bed a few times a week, but being able to sleep in a bed optimized for my comfort even 60% of the time has greatly improved my quality of life, and my partner agrees. Story 25. I think it is no one else's business but between you two. Many couples end up on the couch if someone snores, they cannot sleep, or they have night shifts, so there is nothing wrong with creating an actual comfortable solution. Story 26. I think separate bedrooms used to be common, especially among wealthier families who could afford the extra rooms. Story 27. It is not my ideal, but I have done it before and it was fine. If I could choose, I would prefer my partner to sleep in the same bed as me. However, it is not a deal breaker, and the relationship I had with separate bedrooms was still a good one while it lasted. When it ended, it was over something unrelated. I would do it again for the right person. Story 28. I value my personal space and sleep much better alone, so I am all for it. I do not understand why people want to sleep in the same bed when they have the option not to. My dream would be to have both sides of a semi-detached house. His and hers. Story 29. I would be fine with it. I am also epileptic, so it is absolutely crucial for me to get my 7 to 8 hours of rest on time. Unfortunately, anytime I share a bed with someone new, such as a one-night stand or a new girlfriend, I do not sleep very well, at least not at first. That does not mean I do not want to share a bed with my partner, because I absolutely do. It is just that I do not want to have a seizure while sharing a bed, embarrass myself, scare her, or cause problems. Story 30. As a man, I fully support this and hope it becomes the norm. Having personal space for sleeping when you are sick or upset, a bed that is exactly as hard or soft as you like, your own closet, and so on, can help many relationships. For me, it is non-negotiable. If you have guests, you can sleep together and temporarily use one of your rooms as the guest room. However, for the other 98% of the time, it is better to have separate rooms. You can still cuddle and have intimacy, but then sleep separately. Story 31. It's the greatest thing ever. Having your own personal space is priceless. Also, waking up your partner accidentally for whatever reason is frustrating, especially when you work different schedules. Story 32. I feel like I'm missing a limb when my wife isn't in bed with me. That being said, we have a split king with different mattresses, and we have our own comforters. Trying to share a comforter at first nearly killed our marriage because we kept waking each other up, yanking it off the other person. I sleep hot, so I need a thinner one than she does. I'm extremely introverted and totally understand the need for space. So we have designated hobby, studio, and office corners. We have a small house, but if we can upgrade, we will each have a dedicated room to ourselves, just not for sleeping. I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with this. It might just be a challenge to find a partner who is fine with that setup. Story 33. I personally cannot imagine a life without sleeping next to my wife, smelling her, feeling her, touching her. Your relationship is unique. We all have different standards, and what works for you and your partner may not work for others. Just do what works for you and your partner. You be yourself. Story 34. Besides separate bedrooms, separate beds in the same room is another option some people choose. I have heard it said that it ruins the relationship. From relationships I have observed, it definitely can work, with the caveat that it requires more effort. You need to be more purposeful to have intimacy and affection rather than relying on the habit of sleeping close to one another. In the end, it really comes down to what each person is comfortable with. Story 35. My wife and I have separate rooms. I work the third shift and she works a regular 8 to 5. It is much easier for me to crawl into my own bed when I get off at 6 a.m. instead of waiting almost 2 hours to get into our bed. We have sleepovers or sometimes just hang out and watch television in her room. Then I go to bed. She also likes to watch television before bed, and I cannot stand to hear a television while I am trying to fall asleep. Our sleep has improved a lot in my opinion. We often joke that we have our own apartments in the house. Story 36. My husband and I have been sleeping separately for at least 5 years now due to his snoring, and I love it. It is wonderful to have your own room in a family home. Story 37. My sister-in-law has been with her partner for more than 15 years and has never lived together. They both prefer their own space, have their own apartments, and visit each other. It has worked great for them. Similarly, my uncle and aunt never shared a bed because they were both restless sleepers who snore. They used 2 queen-size beds. They were married for over 40 years. Story 38. Interesting topic. Obviously quite triggering for a few people here in this thread. Data is clear. While we believe we sleep better with our partner, the objective truth is we do not. From a health point of view, it is actually much better to have your own sleeping space. I love the idea and would do this in a heartbeat. Even 1 to 2 nights a week in your own space could really help sleep quality. Story 39. If I had to live with a partner, I would want separate bedrooms. Ideally, we would maintain separate residences, a living apart together relationship, even if that means just separate suites. Story 40. I know a middle-aged couple who do the separate bedroom arrangement. They have been married for over 20 years and claim it works for them, although they did not start out with separate rooms. From someone who has observed their relationship closely over the last few years, I would confidently say they are heading towards either divorcing or spending the rest of their lives semi-miserable, feeling stuck with each other. They are both extremely avoidant and short-tempered with each other, even in front of company. It would never work for me and my relationship, but that does not mean it cannot work for others. I just think there is a difference between wanting a space of your own and having a space to avoid your partner when things get difficult. Story 41. Would not work for me. I need to be in bed with my wife. The few times she kicked me out of bed during an argument, I basically did not sleep the whole night. Story 42. I would find that strange. You can have a room for your hobbies, but a separate bedroom seems unusual. Story 43. I know a few middle-aged people over 50 who do this. Snoring seems to be the main reason. I would not want to, not yet at 65. My wife might get 2 single duvets, as ours always seems to end up on my side of the bed. Story 44. I snore. We have young children. My wife co-sleeps with the baby or works unusual hours for a highly demanding job in the medical field. I sleep in my office bedroom most nights. Your relationship is your relationship. Story 45. I think with the amount of belongings people own these days, it would be better to have separate rooms and have sleepovers instead. You can have your own personal space with no restrictions. There is a different kind of peace in that. Also, you can decorate the rest of your house together. Having separate rooms is reasonable enough. Sleeping separately is a different matter though. Story 46. If I were faced with an expensive divorce and potentially paying lawyers and the state a lot of money, or having to be roommates with my asset-bound partner, I would rather be roommates. We can work out the formalities as we go. If the relationship is healthy, but one person snores loudly like a motorcycle rally and the other is a light sleeper, I think it is reasonable. For the most part, I would rather share a couch than be separate in the same space. Story 47. I wish it would be great to have separate bedrooms, a bit of personal space. The only thing is sometimes, in the middle of the night, she or I will get the urge. If you are in the same bed, it is just easier. Story 48. I do not need separate bedrooms but would prefer separate beds at times. That would cause more relationship problems than it is worth, so I just sleep with my wife every night. Story 49. Bedroom divorce. I snore and she wants to fall asleep to the television, so we sleep in separate beds. I sleep in the guest room. It is not my bedroom per se, just where I sleep. Story 50. I wouldn't want it because I'm very cuddly and clingy. Luckily, I found someone who is even more cuddly and clingy than me. My grandparents still sleep side by side, even though my grandfather needs 24-hour care. They technically have separate beds, but they are pushed together. They've been married for 70 years. I think people have to do what's right for them, and I would never judge someone for that. I have a friend who has been with his partner nearly 20 years, and they don't live together. I wouldn't want it, but that's why I'm not in a relationship with either of them. We should be allowed to meet the needs of our relationships without others who aren't involved passing judgment. Story 51. I am okay with both options. Sleeping together and touching each other throughout the night is very comforting and intimate. Sleeping separately provides the freedom of sleep schedule, freedom of movement, and freedom to choose room lighting, noise level, and temperature. Story 52. My friends who did shift work at the power plants often had a second bedroom for when they worked nights or outages. It made sense, but when they were on normal day shifts, they shared a bed again. If everyone is happy, you do you. Story 53. With my wife, we each have our own apartment. So you can do whatever you want as long as everyone is happy. Story 54. Depends on the circumstances. Most of the time it is just because one person snores or tosses and turns a lot, in which case it is no big deal. Story 55. I understand the idea and why people do it. It would absolutely not work with me though. I'm too much of a cuddle bug. Not being able to sleep next to someone I like who is gorgeous, soft, smells good, and feels good. Touching her brings me peace. If she decided to sleep in another room, it would eat at me. I couldn't do it. At least let's fall asleep together, and once I'm asleep and you can't, then I wouldn't mind if you went to the other room if I was keeping you up. Story 56. If it is just so someone does not have to sleep on the couch when things get rough, then it is probably not a good idea in my opinion. If it is because you want to sleep separately to get better sleep quality, then I think it is totally valid. Obviously, it would have to be agreed upon by your partner, but I would probably be fine with it. I cannot imagine sleeping with someone who hates white noise when I need white noise to sleep. Story 57. My husband and I have only ever slept in separate beds while at the same house when one of us is ill, and we are either isolating or avoiding congestion, snoring, or constant coughing. However, it is still a bed in the guest room, not the couch. If snoring or other disruptions are a regular issue, there is nothing wrong with having separate rooms if it works best for the couple. Story 58. No way I could sleep. I toss and turn already with insomnia, and I could not wish that on anyone unless it was a California king. Story 59. If both parties agree, then there is nothing wrong with it. For me personally, if I wanted to sleep alone, I would have remained single. Story 60. I don't recommend it if you can avoid it. Late night pillow talk is how we resolve almost all of our emotional issues and plan our lives. Someone who highly values personal space to the point of wanting a separate bedroom should consider if marriage is really the end goal and what their priorities are. That being said, if you do it, you need to set aside a very strict space and time to talk about life and maintain your sex life. It is too easy in separate spaces to become emotionally distant roommates. Story 61. I am open to it. I think it is nice to have separate bedrooms to retain some personal space for creativity and identity, but to have the option to co-sleep most nights or when desired. Story 62. It does not matter if you both agree to do it. You can do whatever suits you. However, try your best to make up before sleeping each time despite this. Story 63. My girlfriend and I have different preferences. She likes a cold room while I prefer it warmer. She likes the TV on and I like it dark and quiet. She wakes up much earlier than I do for work, so we do not disrupt each other's sleep. We still spend nights together on weekends, but we both get better rest on our own. I feel like this arrangement works well for us and has no negative effects on our sex life. Plus, we live in a house with extra bedrooms and no children, so why not take advantage of having our own spaces? Story 64. I think it is great if it works for you and your partner, but it is not my preference. I spent the first 21 years of my life in a bedroom without a partner, so I do not want to sleep alone when I am in a relationship, if I can help it. Story 65. From a romantic and rent perspective, This sounds like the type of thing that makes no sense to me. I mean, it is not that I think people should not do it. I personally simply would not. Other people can have different priorities, and that is their business. Story 66. In real life, I only have one negative example of this, which is my parents. It was not a happy ending. They fought almost every waking moment and were clearly unhappy together. My dad snored a lot, and I don't remember if my mom was particularly bothered by the snoring itself, but they did not seem to be in love with each other. I don't recall seeing them hug or kiss or anything like that. The separate bedrooms were probably an extension of that. They eventually got divorced a couple of years later. I am somewhat clingy with girlfriends, probably as a result of watching this relationship dynamic while growing up, and I want to be close to them most of the time. Sleeping together is part of that, as it represents a special kind of vulnerability and closeness that I absolutely crave. Never say never, of course, but I sincerely doubt I could be in an actual relationship with someone and not sleep in the same bed with them. At that point, I would feel it is more like a friends with benefits situation, just living together and being intimate occasionally, not in a loving relationship. If it works for the couples in question and they both want it, sure, go for it. I might judge somewhat, but it is not my relationship, so it is whatever. Story 67. I snore and pass gas too much. It does not bother either of us, as it means we both get decent sleep. Also, I produce too much body heat. If I slept in her bed, I would be sweating because she feels cold far more than I do, so there are more rugs on the bed. We have been together for 10 years, and this is not an indication of our relationship, just practicality. Story 68. I saw another post asking how many times it is okay for your partner to hit the snooze button on their alarm. It did not occur to me that if you do not work the same schedule as them, you will have to figure something out with the alarm clocks, especially if you have an inconsiderate partner. Thus, separate bedrooms seem like a good idea. I would insist on having the larger bedroom, but I would let her have the main bathroom as she would have more things to keep. Her making a late-night naked journey to the bathroom via my bedroom would be welcome. Story 69. Would not be interested. Have your own office or workspace for sure. Plus, kicking your spouse out of the bedroom because you are mad is very dramatic. It is strange that you are already planning for that. Am higher. Story 70. Wow. To each their own, I guess. The problem will be finding a partner who is okay with that. It does sound strange for sure. If you are actually sleeping on a couch because you are going through something, you need to work on your relationship, I think. Story 71. That seems strange. The purpose of living with a partner is to live together. You can share a one-bedroom apartment while still having personal space. Story 72. I joke about this to my husband, half serious. Sometimes our sleep is not in sync. I think there is more disruption when one of us cannot fall asleep. He is the opposite though. He thinks he sleeps better together, and the idea to him is weird. Story 73. My opinion, in general, is that it is fine if it works for the couple, instead of having one partner sleep on the couch whenever the relationship is going through something. That is the crazy part. I have been with my partner for 14 years, and that has happened about 5 times. It is definitely not worth investing an entire extra bedroom for. And if it is happening so often that it makes sense to have separate bedrooms, I would run from that relationship. Story 74. My wife and I had separate bedrooms because of my work schedule, which included many overnight shifts. Your situation is unusual, especially when anticipating problems that may arise. Story 75. I mean, if you have the space, sure. But if you are throwing your partner out or getting thrown out often enough, this is a problem. Do not move in together. For the record, in 6 years with my wife, this has never happened. We just roll over and fall asleep facing our respective walls. Story 76. I heard good things about people who did it. I think a room with 2 single beds and another one with a double bed would be the ideal arrangement. It provides enough personal space while remembering that you are still a couple. Story 77. If I ever end up living with someone, I would have to have my own room. I have never shared a bed with a woman and had a good night's sleep. I could not do it all the time. Most women are too cold and want to cuddle. I am too warm and hate being touched for more than 5 minutes. I like my own time to relax. When I am with someone, I feel like I have to constantly fill the silence with talking. Silence makes me feel extremely uncomfortable. Story 78. Not a fan unless one of us sleeps very differently from the other, such as snoring, being unable to stand movement, or having differences in preferences for white noise. To each their own. Story 79. It depends. Do they still leave their dirty dishes in the sink because they know I will put them away for them? Like everything, there are pros and cons. Although I cannot think what the cons would be. Sometimes my chihuahua tries to snuggle in bed with me, but if I am not in bed first, that little dog will sit right in the center of the bed and on top of the blanket, making it impossible for me to sleep comfortably. How does such a small dog take up so much room? On the other hand, my cat is the best snuggler ever. When he is not screaming to be let out at night to hunt, he is basically equivalent to sleeping medication. Story 80. Having a partner sleeping on the couch whenever the relationship is going through something. I can understand the need for personal space or if you are a light sleeper, but needing a spare room for arguments is insane. Story 81. My past and presumably my future partner will not sleep in a hammock. Conversely, I cannot sleep in a bed to a degree that is healthy for my insomnia or back pain, or perhaps my budget. I have not tried a medical bed recently but cannot afford one. At least not without being so physically exhausted that I would pass out on the floor. Side note, I have only ever met one person who slept in a hammock as her main bed, and I was the one who convinced her to do so as she also had back pain and insomnia. However, she had a boyfriend and was way out of my league. Also, we were too similar. She was queer and had all the same traumas and red flags I had, so I do not think it ever would have worked. Story 82. Non-starter for me and my wife is the same. It seems like it works for others, but that does not sound appealing at all to me. As for your concern about one party sleeping on the sofa when things are not going well, in the 9 years, nearly 7 married, I have been with my wife, we have never slept apart due to conflict. That is simply not a consideration from my perspective. Story 83. If my partner needed space, then they needed space. It is fine with me and the space can be beneficial. Story 84. I don't think I would want to live without the incidental conversations as we fall asleep or wake up randomly and have that comforting presence there. I would hate having to plan sleepovers. If snoring became an issue, I would get a continuous positive airway pressure machine. Sleeping in a warmer bedroom is uncomfortable, but I did not have air conditioning growing up in eastern Oklahoma, so it is something I know I could get used to. It is the small moments together that I could not stand to miss. After being apart all day at work and doing chores in the evening, I would not give up that time before sleep when it is just us, knowing that even if we are asleep, we are still together. Story 85. Honestly, it is more of a question for your partner. Yes, it can work, but if your partner is someone who wants to be intimate, they might be less keen. It is something you both should talk about and compromise on. Story 86. I personally would not like this. My wife, who is currently going through a divorce, and I used separate blankets in bed to avoid one of us pulling it off the other. But I absolutely loved having my partner right next to me all night. Having someone rub or scratch my back or head as I fall asleep, midnight cuddles and intimacy, morning cuddles and intimacy. All that is missing by sleeping in separate rooms. To each their own, but it would make me feel less happy in my relationship if we slept separately when sleeping together was an option. Story 87. While it can work, cuddling is very good for bonding. If you need a lot of personal space and your own room to sleep in, you may have a somewhat difficult time finding a partner who is comfortable with that. But you like what you like. It's your choice. My partner of 5 years and I have separate houses and spend 3 to 4 nights a week together. No children, no real reason other than space, and we had our own houses and haven't combined yet. So yes, people are out there, especially as you get older. Story 88. My wife and I established what we call a sleep divorce years ago. She has a sleep disorder and insists that the large television stays on all night. I snore loudly and toss and turn throughout the night. It is not perfect and it took some time to get used to, but honestly, it has probably saved our marriage. Each of us having our own space has its good and bad points. Story 89. I told a man this and he said no. However, older couples do this. It is strange if you are newly together. Just get a roommate. Story 90. I would not be able to do it. I love the idea of having a partner and sleeping with them while cuddling. It must be nice. Story 91. Unless there is a medical reason, the thought of separate bedrooms saddens me. Also, twice as much linen to wash. Story 92. This would not work for me for multiple reasons. I am not interested in a partner who wants to sleep separately. Even without it leading to sex, there is a lot of intimacy in sharing a bed. I am not into a partner who needs a lot of space. I am touchy-feely, and if that also means you want privacy, I do not think there should be much privacy between partners. I am not saying partners cannot have private matters. The couch idea is just unhelpful. In a healthy relationship, you should be able to talk through situations and still go to bed together, even if the issue is not completely resolved. Story 93. Are we really together if we sleep separately? It feels more like a roommate situation than a marriage. I would conclude that my partner did not like me much if she asked for a separate bedroom. Story 94. Snuggling with my wife as we fall asleep is one of my favorite times of day. That would be a bit sad to lose. She also prefers to fall asleep knowing I am right there, which makes her feel safer. I genuinely think sleeping alone in a separate room would leave her too frightened to sleep well on her own. Story 95. I would hate to not sleep in the same bed as my wife. The day we have separate bedrooms, the marriage is over. Story 96. If it works for you, then you do you. For me, I would not like it. Living together but separately just seems like we are roommates who have sex. I want to co-sleep, even if we do not cuddle while we sleep. That is what a king-size bed is for. Also, my wife and I sleep in the same bed regardless of what we are going through. It seems very strange to me that someone cannot sleep next to their partner just because they are having an argument or disagreement. Story 97. We can do a man cave or a she shed, but if we are not sleeping together, we might as well not live together. Story 98. It is juvenile and strange. Sometimes one of us falls asleep on the couch watching television, which is different. Sometimes I sleep on the couch if my back is bothering me, but having separate bedrooms is really unusual because you are not roommates. Story 99. I have observed that many men familiar with the challenges of modern relationships advocate never moving in with a partner. Approximately 75% of relationships are ended by women, increasing to 90% if they have a college degree. Since more women now have college degrees than men, living with someone often means giving up half of your belongings or wealth. Even outside of family court and child-related issues, cohabitating with a partner is usually a poor deal for most men from a logical perspective. Your approach seems even worse, as you are preparing for a bad relationship to end or lead to social isolation. If this is how you want to live, I do not believe you are prepared for a healthy relationship or living with another person. You should maintain separate residences to avoid the emotional conflict you anticipate before even beginning the relationship. Story 100. I enjoy sleeping next to my partner. If she wanted separate bedrooms, I would end the relationship. You might as well be friends with benefits or roommates in my view. However, two people have to do what works for them. I just cannot fathom it. Story 101. I would not accept such an arrangement. My rule is if we are actually sleeping together, we use the toilet separately. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.